Greetings everyone, welcome back to Lamech's FFX. You know, I was studying Filipino history to see if it was similar to Black history, like I did for the Hispanics and Native Americans. And I thought, maybe I won't find it.
Admiral Dewey met with Emilio Aguinaldo, who was in Hong Kong at that time, and he promised the Filipinos that if they helped the Americans fight the Spanish in the Philippines, America would give the Filipinos their independence. So Spain surrenders to the United States, and Emilio Aguinaldo goes home to his hometown of Coit, Cavite, and on June 12, 1898, raises the first Philippine flag, declares himself president, and declares the Philippines independent from Spain. But although there were American and Spanish authorities in the audience, neither of them acknowledged that declaration of independence. Here in the United States, President McKinley was already stating to the American people that it was America's duty to civilize, Christianize, and educate the Filipinos, and that the Filipinos were unfit for self-rule.
Oh, there it is. That's what the U.S. did to Panama when they wanted that Panama Canal. Okay, so
there were also black soldiers fighting the Philippines, the Buffalo Soldiers. And when these soldiers arrived in the Philippines, they heard the white soldiers calling Filipino names like gooks and niggers.
And with that, I have enough content to do this episode. So, today we are going to use Final Fantasy X to find the curse of the dark sign on Filipinos. Now, you may wonder, what is this dark sign? Well, the dark sign is a phrase that we obtained from the game called Dark Souls. It is a curse that brands the humans in the game. You see, we examined the lore of Dark Souls and found that the game, which was set in the Dark Ages, resembled the history of the Moors. As a result, we say that the dark sign is a set of historical events that identifies a group of people as part of the Negroes race, the black people's race. I'm specifying Negro to say I'm specifically talking about the black people who were enslaved and brought to America or colonized wherever they still are in the world. Because there's a vast difference between the people with black skin who are colonized and the people with black skin who are not. They are not the same ethnicity at all. All right? Now, in a previous episode, we found this dark sign on Native Americans by examining the history of colonization and genocide by the Caucasians, showing that the Native Americans and Hispanics have a shared history and thus the shared bloodline with these Negroes. Today, we will look in Final Fantasy X to find the dark sign in the Philippines, because apparently they might be the same race as well. Now, there is one thing you should know about the dark sign. You see, for both blacks and Native Americans, which includes Hispanics, when I discussed their history, I found their story in the Bible. That is because the dark sign is also a set of events listed in Deuteronomy chapter 28 or Leviticus chapter 26, but we're focusing on Deuteronomy chapter 28. After all, we are examining Final Fantasy X, a game that many people know has a lot of connections to the Bible. And when a game is so biblical, it is also extremely historical. So, let's examine the humans of Final Fantasy X and see if it ties in with what the Filipinos recognize as their history. Now, let us begin. Now, I do not know if you are paying attention to the background music that is playing, but it is a song from Final Fantasy X called Someday the Dream Will End. Now, in the game, the title of this song is connected to two thoughts. One is the sadness of losing our main character, Titus. You see, because he is a dream of the Fayth, when sin is defeated, he will disappear. So for him, the song means someday Titus, our main character, must end. The second meaning refers to sin itself, which is also a dream of the Fayth. It has been terrorizing Spira for 1,000 years, so the hope is someday this dream, this nightmare that is sin, will end. Now, for the Philippines, this nightmare takes the form of Caucasians, specifically Spain and America. You see, in the same way that sin terrorized Spira for 1,000 years, Caucasians terrorized the Philippines for 300 years? 300 years is a long time. So, the Spaniards, first by Ferdinand Magellan, appeared in the Philippines in 1521. For some of you who are wondering where you heard the name Magellan from, that is the name of the warden of Impel Down in One Piece who ate the poison devil fruit. Ironic, as we are going to talk about how the Caucasians imprisoned the Philippines and poisoned them with Christianity. Anyway, the appearance of Ferdinand Magellan is interesting because the Philippines, like Spira, is an island country. And like Sin, when the Spaniards came to the Philippines, they killed many people in order to spread their religion. However, you know the story of Xanakin having wars with Bavel, right? You see, during this time, many Filipino people sided with the Spaniards. So, the Filipinos had to fight other people from the Philippines in order to prevent the spread of Spain. Then, in 1901, America appeared, because this was during the time of the Spanish-American War. So, America offered to help the Philippines and to get them independence. So, the Filipinos called upon or summoned America to save them. But to understand, America is Sin. And what did Sin do to Xanarkin after it saved him from Bavel? Yeah, so even though America promised the Philippines that they would be an independent country, America then declared that the Filipinos did not have the ability to govern themselves.
So if Spain surrenders to the United States, and Emilio Aguinaldo goes home to his hometown of Coit Cavite, and on June 12, 1898, raises the first Philippine flag, declares himself president, and declares the Philippines independent from Spain. But although there were American and Spanish authorities in the audience, neither of them acknowledged that declaration of independence. Here in the United States, President McKinley was already stating to the American people that it was America's duty to civilize, Christianize, and educate the Filipinos, and that the Filipinos were unfit for self-rule.
So, they destroyed the Philippines. According to the Philippines, America killed over 2 million of their people. Now, you see how Spira is kept in a poor state, right? The reason it is like this is because Sin keeps destroying their cities and not allowing them to develop into a first world country. With that said, you see how the Philippines is also a third world country? Here's the problem with the Philippines being a third world country. The Philippines has a lot of natural resources, which means these are things you find in the country. Petroleum, salt, copper, cobalt, nickel, silver, and gold. Petroleum is gasoline. Salt, without salt, you cannot live. And aside from that, we know how valuable gold is. We know how valuable silver is. But nickel is used to make stainless steel. Copper is used to make military items and electric wiring. And cobalt is used to make technological devices. In other words, these are all things needed to make a country into a first world country. And regarding them being poor, first world countries would pay a lot in order to get these items. Also, the Philippines has the technology and the schools and the people who want to develop the country into a first world country. And that last part, the having the people, is the only thing you need in order to develop into a first world country. So, they have the education, they have the material, and they have the people who can and will use both. So, why are they still a third world country?
I thought every town was little, like Bisayde and Killicoe.
Towns don't usually get bigger than that. Because when a lot of people start to gather...
Sin?
And you cannot say that Filipino money isn't worth what American money is worth, because if the Filipinos have the resources that Americans want, America will pay American money to get it. Therefore, the Filipino money would be backed by American money because they'd have American money if America was paying for the resources. Also, I did the research. Apparently, the Philippines has considerably more resources than Japan, And Japan, being also an island country, is considerably more developed than the Philippines. That should be impossible. But the Philippines is not like Japan. The Philippines is more like Haiti. Haiti is also an island country with a lot of resources, but is a third world country. The resources I want to focus on now are bauxite and iridium. Bauxite is used to make aluminum, and iridium is an extremely rare metal used to make extremely necessary things such as electrical contracts, spark plugs, and other things that require you to run high levels of electricity through it. So this is a thing that's very rare and very valuable, but it is found in abundance in Haiti. Now, the most basic understanding of economics is, if you have something that is valuable, especially if it is rare, then you become rich simply by having it. So the question is, why is it that Haiti, who has this and other resources, so poor? The reason is America wants those resources. And because America wants those resources, it does everything it can to make sure Haiti cannot develop.
And whether it is Europe or US or now China, it's always the same. We need Africa to be impoverished because we need those raw materials and we need them dirt cheap.
I thought I told you that racism never ended. So allow me to inform you of what the definition of a third world country actually is. A third world country is a country housed by either blacks, Hispanics, or Native Americans that has a lot of resources that Caucasians or other races want. So they enslave those people to mine those resources, such as diamonds, rubies, silver, gold, chocolate, everything you enjoy in America. All those are mined from countries that have the resources to develop, but they can't develop because your government enslaved the natives. That is a third world country. And this is the curse of Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 33. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed alway. The fruit of the land is the natural resources. The resources in both Haiti and the Philippines is eaten up by a foreign nation called America. And so they are only crushed always into remaining third world countries, especially if they try to use those metals to create technology.
But you Alped used the forbidden machina. You know what that means? Sin was born because people use machina.
We see actually raw material extraction has stayed the same. What has caused industry to fall is the fall in manufacturing production. This is deliberate because we will never, as Western economists, as Western policymakers, we cannot afford to allow Africa to industrialize and start producing manufactures. Okay, so we will do everything to stop that.
So I just did a search on how many mines are in the Philippines to mine their resources, and somehow I found out that the total export from the Philippines for their minerals amounted to $2.86 million in 2023 alone. So I don't know how you can export $2 million and be poor. So, as it is between Sin and Spira, as long as America exists, the Philippines cannot prosper. So, the hope of the Philippines is someday the American dream will end. So, since this is Final Fantasy X, let's talk about religion. In the Bible, here is another curse. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 36. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. And there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone. So, the kings of the Philippines were brought under the nation of Spain. and they were made to serve the wooden cross of Christianity, specifically Catholicism. According to the Bible, this is a curse. In Final Fantasy X, because of the destruction of sin, the people of Spira adopted a religion that looks remarkably like Catholicism, and the practice of the summoner traveling to the different temples is reminiscent of the Catholic practice Iglesia Visita, which literally means church visiting. Now, the schools that were set up in the Philippines were established by the church.
Finally, in 1863, public education became a priority, although the education was still poor and completely under the control of the church. Not even 30% of the students could read or write Spanish at all, and even less spoke the language correctly, despite the system being created by the Spanish colonizers. Many of the wealthy children were sent to Europe for schooling instead.
So, although they were not taught to read and write, they were taught about Caucasian Jesus, who supposedly loves everyone. This is interesting because the school system of Final Fantasy X is actually the temples. They teach the religion of Yevon to the people. What is most interesting about this is the summoner's journey. You see, many of the Filipinos were carted off to American schools to learn their ways. Well, how does this connect? Well, because the people who go to these schools get ideas. Like black people and Native Americans, Filipinos like Jose Rizal would express concern for how his people are treated. And how are ideas like this met?
Uni will die, you know? You know, don't you?
You see, a religion is a set of values that govern your actions, and ideas can become a religion. They are meant to give hope to the people. And if that hope flourishes, Caucasians will kill the man who came up with it and corrupt that religion. Then that idea is used to further enslave the people that it was meant to save. That is what happened to Martin Luther King. So, here is the cycle. You, as a summoner or revolutionary, go to American schools to learn how to get rights for your people, or get the final Aeon. And at the end of your journey, Caucasians, the people who you want to accept you, will kill you, and they will use your idea to further harm the people. Then it is up to the next generation to find an idea that can beat your idea. That is the cycle of sin. You travel to the temples, you get a final Aeon that is strong enough to beat sin, you die, and your Aeon, your religion, your hope, becomes the new, stronger sin. I'm reading something that says that Rizal was happy to give his life for his countrymen.
I would have gladly died. I live for the people of Spira, and would have gladly died for them.
But unfortunately, you can never get freedom by following the system of your oppressor. Now, after all this, I get quite a bit of opposition. The opposition would include someone saying, no, the Filipino people are not like black people because black people don't have their own governmental leaders, meaning that they are not ruled over by other black people. And also, you cannot say that the Philippines are poor because of American oppression. They're poor because of corrupt leadership. And with that said, that is very much like what black people go through. You see, in many African countries, there are leaders who come from the so-called African people, meaning that these blacks would have black people ruling over them. However, if these leaders actually care about their people and try to help them, then America threatens them. You see, according to the documentary called The End of Poverty, America's offer is that the American government can either roll out the red carpet for them and do what America says, or America will bury them under a carpet of bombs.
If we don't like what a democratically elected leader of another country is doing, for example, opposing the exploitation of oil in his country, someone who looks like me will walk into that president's office. I had the job at one time. Walks into the office and says, and now I just want to remind you that I can make you and your family very, very rich. if you play my game, our game. Or I can see to it that you're thrown out of office or assassinated if you decide to fulfill your campaign promises. And usually it's said a little more subtly than that because there may be a tape recorder listening. But they get the message because every one of those presidents knows what happened to Arbenz of Guatemala, and Allende of Chile, and Roldos of Ecuador, and Lumumba of the Congo, and Torrijos, and on. The list is very long of presidents that we have had thrown out or assassinated. There's no question about that. And they all know this. So we perpetuate the system that way. Here you offer from this pocket, you offer a few $100 million, corruption. Or from this pocket, you offer subversives, jackals, to go in and overthrow the government or assassinate the president. And this has happened time and time and time again. Usually the economic hitmen are successful, so we don't need to send in the jackals. But on those occasions when we're not successful, as for me, I failed with Omar Torrijos in Panama and Jaime Roldos in Ecuador. And so the jackals were sent in and assassinated these men.
So the point is, only corrupt leaders can survive because those are the only types of leaders that America will allow. The Philippines would be the same way. This is interesting because in Final Fantasy X, the leaders are Micah and Keenock. They are both human, so the leaders are human, the same race as the oppressed. But they benefit from the destruction that is this foreign power, so they allow sin. They let the people dream that sin will be gone, but the government is fueling sin.
This plan won't work, you know that. We'll just let them dream a little longer.
Speaking of how corrupt Bavel is, sin is supposed to destroy technological cities. That is why it destroyed Zanarkand, right? But Bavel is also a technological city. It's actually a technological powerhouse. And worse is it is right by the Calmlands. The Calmlands is where the Grand Summoner defeats Sin. It is also where Sin is reborn. So with such a huge technological powerhouse so close to it, why doesn't it attack Bavel? No amount of military would stop it from doing so. So why? Isaiah chapter 28 verse 15. Because ye have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with hell are we at agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come unto us. For we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood have we hid ourselves. That is the power of corruption. When the big baddie will attack your country, it will not attack you specifically. But if things don't go his way, he will sit in your house and show all the world that this is the seat of sin. And lastly, I remember that the Albed are called
those sandblasted grease monkeys.
It's funny because black people would attribute any race that is called monkey as black people. And here is the curse that fits. Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. Now, there's a lot in this verse, but I want to focus on the fact that this race that we're talking about would become a byword. A byword is a term used to describe a person instead of using their name. Since the Albed come from the desert, they are called sand-blasted. That is a descriptor, not their name. Since they work with machines, they are called grease monkeys. These are words that describe what they are and what they do and are used as insults. That is what a byword is. For the Hispanics, the word is Hispanic. That is the byword, describing that they were conquered by Spain and have Spanish customs and language. The word Philippines is a byword saying that they are owned by King Philip of Spain. And for black people, the byword is nigger. The word nigger literally means black, meaning that is a byword to say, yes, these are black people. Why is that important? Well, remember when I said that America had war with the Philippines? Well, during that war, black people were commissioned to help America put down the Filipino people. But
there were also black soldiers fighting the Philippines, the Buffalo Soldiers. And when these soldiers arrived in the Philippines, they heard the white soldiers calling Filipino names like gooks and niggers. And it angered them so much that for the first and only time in U.S. military history, large numbers of black troops deserted their posts and helped the enemies.
So, when black people found out that the Philippines were receiving the same treatment as blacks, they decided to help them instead. Speaking of the same people, there are groups of people called Igorots and Negritos. A Negrito literally means little black man or little nigger. These two groups were put in human zoos along with the furtive pygmy of Africa.
Native peoples were brought to the St. Louis Exposition from the far corners of the globe. From Japan came representatives of the Ainu people. Patagonians came from South America. Igorots and Negritos came from the Philippines. Both were thought by scientists of the time to be near the bottom of the evolutionary ladder for humans. The Negritos were even marketed at the fair as another missing link between humans and apes. But perhaps the most exotic people group brought to St. Louis for public display were pygmies from the African Congo.
And the furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten.
And this is what these Negritos looked like. So you can see the resemblance between this supposedly Asian country and the Negro people. By the way, Negro also means black. Also, like the Native Americans, the Filipinos were forced to dress like savages and to cook animals so that the Caucasians could take pictures and say to all their advertisements, "See how uncivilized these people are? This is why we, the Caucasians, must come and save them."
But yet here in America, very few Americans knew what a Filipino looked like, where the Philippines was located, and why we're fighting this war thousands of miles away. So Congress appropriated over $1 million to set up a Philippine exposition at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. Over 1,000 Filipino natives were brought in to inhabit those villages. And again, it was propaganda to show how uncivilized and primitive the Filipinos were. After all, they were half naked compared to the Americans. To further prove how uncivilized we were, they had one of the Filipino tribes, the Igorots, kill, cook, and eat a dog every day during that fair. And it was one of the most popular attractions at that fair. And that stereotype that Filipinos eat dogs started in St. Louis in 1904.
Therefore, the Philippines is history of Caucasians being Seymour Guado again. Okay, I think that should just about do it. So, because of how close Filipino history is to Black history and Native American history, I think I've just about proven that the Philippines and the Blacks and the Native Americans, which includes the Hispanics, share the same cursed dark sign, which means that they share the same race. Wait a minute, did I mention that the Filipinos were sent on slave ships to Mexico? No, I didn't? Well, yes, they were sent on slave ships, like black people, to Mexico to mingle among the Mexicans. And black people also were shipped to the Philippines to mingle amongst them. So even if you didn't think black people were there, yeah, they're there. Anyway, if you know where I can get some more history, please let me know. I'm looking for evidence of America erasing Filipino history because I have evidence of them doing that for Blacks and Native Americans, but I haven't found that yet for Philippines. But if you know of anything else, I'll take all the knowledge I can get as well. Also, finding credible history is very difficult, so show me where I can find this, especially if you have it on YouTube. Thus, Filipino people, if you can give me credible documentaries, I will make more videos that tell the history. So, don't forget to subscribe and share this with your Filipino brethren so that they can learn what I'm going to say next. Now, we have established that the hope of Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, and apparently Philippines, is that the American dream will end. Yes? The question is, how can that happen? And I have an answer. But first, notice that when addressing this history, I always had a scripture from the Bible to justify my point. It's almost as if the dark sign is in the Bible. So I ask, did you ever read it? What I'm saying is the religion of Christianity is wrong, right? It's wrong. But the Bible is right. Christians have the Bible, but they never do it. This is in Final Fantasy X. This exact thing is in Final Fantasy X. For you see, the people sing the hymn of the faith. That is part of their religion, that they have the hymn, right? But the hymn was a song to sing defiance against Bavel.
Let me tell you about the hymn of the faith. It was one Zanakan song, sung in defiance of Bavel.
They knew the song, they sang the song, but they never did what the song actually said to do. It wasn't until they performed what the song said to do that they were free, that they were saved from sin. They became saved when they defied Bavel. In the same way, Caucasian Christianity pushes white Jesus, but the Bible doesn't speak of white Jesus. Caucasian Christianity pushes that you can eat whatever you want, especially swine, but the Bible doesn't say that. Caucasian Christianity pushes pagan holidays and the cross, but the Bible does not support these things. The Christians know the Bible, some of it. They speak the words that are in the Bible, but they never do what the Bible says. Why is it that the Caucasian Christianity is so much against what the Bible says? Or a better question, what would happen if these colonized and enslaved people actually performed what the Bible said? What if they defied Caucasian religion? The answer is they would be saved, meaning they would destroy the world. You see, like the dark soul, you would consume everything, and soon the age of enlightenment will end, and only the age of dark will remain.
If Africa does do something different, I assure you living standards of all those in Europe, North America, and Asia is going to fall. Okay? And that is a big price to pay. I assure you that the West is not going to allow that without a big fight.
Soon the flames did fade, and only dark remained. Thus began the age of men, the age of dark. However, Lord Gwyn trembled at the dark, clinging to his age of fire, and in dire fear of humans, and the Dark Lord who would one day be born amongst them.
And that is the important lesson I wanted you to share with your brethren. So, shall I prove it? I will. Next time on Lamech's FFX.